With Parliament all set to start its next session on the 25th of April, will pending bills be passed this time around? GVL Narsimha and Rajeev Gowda both join us. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Mr. Rao, let me start by asking you, given the fact that the Uttarakhand matter is going to be front and centre when Parliament resumes, and of course this is not going to be the budget session because the budget session was prorogued, do you anticipate at least the first few days to be lost on account of Uttarakhand?
Certainly not so, because the matter is currently pending before the Honorable Supreme Court. So I think if anyone tries to celebrate any victories or want to block Parliament, it will only go as an anti-people measure. The people of the country want the Parliament to function and want the Parliament to transact its legislative business. So if any party attempts to do it, it would go as a negative sentiment in the court of the people. So we certainly hope that the Congress party would not take this anti-people measure.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait to see whether Uttarakhand is in fact taken up in Parliament or not. The Congress has already moved that by way of a motion. But let me ask you, Mr. Rao, because as a spokesperson, you've obviously now been briefed by the government about the possible legislative agenda that the government would like to take forward in this session of Parliament. There are several pending bills pending before the Rajya Sabha from the previous session, and there are several new bills that the government intends to bring. For instance, the Sarfazi Act, the Public Utilities Bill, the Bankruptcy Code. Give us a sense of what is going to be finally on the legislative agenda.
I think largely, I think it would be the financial business, with a lot of all the standing committees reporting back to Parliament on the budget proposals. But certain bills like the Whistleblower Protection Bill, Industries Regulation Bill, I think some of these bills are pending in Rajya Sabha. And I think we have heard Parliamentary Affairs Minister mentioning 13 bills will be taken up in Lok Sabha. So we certainly, it's a short second half of the session, and I think we have a lot of legislative agenda that has already been drawn up for both the houses of Parliament.
Is the GST going to be taken forward in any form or fashion at all in this session?
I think you have had the top ministers in the government mentioning that over the past few days. Certainly the government hopes.
No, they've been mentioning that for a long time, so it's not just the past few days. They've been mentioning that for a long time. But the question is, are we going to see the government table the GST bill?
I think that's what you have had top ministers saying it today and yesterday. So certainly the government talks about what it intends to do, and certainly you will see this bill introduced in Rajya Sabha and see it get passed, because there has been a lot of discussion about.
So you are going to table the GST bill in this session?
Yes, that's what I'm given to understand.
Okay, Mr. Gowda, let me get your comments on that, because the government now seems keen to be able to table the GST bill. We also understand that perhaps there has been an agreement that's been arrived at between the government as well as the Congress party on the GST. Can we expect forward movement on the GST if the government were to table it?
There are two issues here, Shireen. One, there are elections going on in key states like Tamil Nadu and Bengal, which have significant memberships in both houses. So it's unlikely that, given that their MPs will not be in Parliament most of the time, I don't think it's particularly likely the government would actually bring this bill in during a time like this. On the other hand, the question that you raised about whether there is any agreement with the Congress party, the government has not reached out to the Congress in the last since the last session on this issue. There are three specific conditions that we have laid, out of which two I think they're quite agreeable to. The third one is still a matter for negotiation. So
are you willing to give up on the third issue, Mr. Gowda? Because that's the sense that we get, that the Congress may not press ahead on getting that ceiling put into the legislative bill itself.
That negotiation has to take place, Shireen. It's not yet concluded. So
okay, so there is a window there. You're not saying an outright no, which is the case last time around.
Well, you know, there are different interpretations. Some people would argue that it is non-negotiable. There are there are more technicalities about multiple rates and things like that, which can possibly give scope for negotiation on this. Anyway, the party, you know, the government has to reach out, has to sit and negotiate with our leadership, and only then will we be able to say whether the third condition is negotiable or not. Until then, it's premature to make a statement on that issue.
Okay. On some of the pending bills, for instance, the MMDR bill, which is pending in the Rajya Sabha, and that's, of course, held up a lot of the M&A activity within the cement sector. So business wants to know, can we expect at least those pending bills where there doesn't seem to be any controversy or contention, can we expect those bills to be cleared by the upper house? Will the Congress play ball?
See, well, you know, as you've seen in the last budget session, the budget session previously, a year ago, etc., the Congress has cooperated and many legislations have passed over time. Now, the basic issue that comes up before Parliament is whether the Parliament will be held hostage due to the government's misdeeds in various areas. Right? So now Mr. Narsimha Rao has just been using the word anti-people. You know, he should be applying the anti-people, anti-democratic definition to his party and its actions in Uttarakhand, their actions in Arunachal Pradesh, their actions, you know, to which the High Court and the Supreme Court have been commenting on very clearly, and which will become much more clear in the next few days. The kind of strictures and the kind of
So let's Mr. Gowda, leave the matter of Uttarakhand to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is cognizant of that matter at this point. But let me ask you about what are the other issues that you plan to bring to the table to take on the government in this particular session?
See, there are many issues that are very, very pressing. One is the issue of drought in Bundelkhand, Marathwada. You know, what is the government doing on these issues? People are dying. People are dying of heat waves in Orissa. You know, there are lots of crucial issues that affect the poorest of the poor that must be center stage. Then, I mean, with Uttarakhand, of course, is the destabilization of democratically elected governments is another central issue. What is happening on campuses, NIT Srinagar, that's another issue. There are issues having to deal with the 20,000 crore scam with the Gujarat gas company, which occurred when Narendra Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat. There is no shortage of issues that are you know, pressing and which will ensure that the government has to respond to the people of India and can come clean on these issues. There's no shortage.
Mr. Rao, of all the issues that Mr. Gowda talked about, I want to pick up on one, and that has to do with the way that this government has handled the drought situation. This is a matter that's now been taken over by the Supreme Court. In fact, the Supreme Court has had some fairly scathing observations to make, saying that the centre has not applied itself seriously to how dire the situation is. There seems to be almost a lackadaisical attitude even while giving affidavits to the Supreme Court. For instance, the government of Gujarat hasn't even submitted the details yet to the apex court on the drought impact in the state. Are you going to be on a back foot when it comes to this issue? Is the government now putting its strategy together to address the criticism that you're likely to face on this matter?
No, Shireen, the government is certainly very serious about the matter, but it is the state governments that have to do a lot in this regard. This has been the position of the central government in the Supreme Court as well. I think in our federal structure, Mr. Gowda represents the state of Karnataka. It is for the government of Karnataka to implement drought relief measures, and that government was given a lot of assistance by the central government. Unlike the Congress party when they were in power, our government had not shown any biased treatment towards non-BJP ruled states. Uttar Pradesh was given nearly 1,500 crores in the month of January.
It's a convenient argument. So it's a convenient argument, Mr. Rao, that when it comes to, I know, but it's again an argument that hasn't gone down well with the court. But I'm afraid I'm completely out of time. I am going to bring the two of you back on Monday. Okay, complete your point, sir.
No, just one line. Yeah, you see, the Supreme Court cannot rewrite the federal structure in the country. I think it's the states which have to implement, most of them including the state of Bihar, in which Congress is a coalition partner. They refuse to declare a drought in the state of Bihar today. How can the central government direct them to declare a drought? So we had appealed to the Supreme Court to pass such directives to the state governments. So largely
You're
it is
right
the
on
state
that count,
governments
Mr.
which have
Rao.
to
You're right on
implement
that
this.
count that both the centre and the state have been reluctant for God knows why to declare a drought situation, to really talk about the reality on the ground and how bad things are. So both the centre and the state responsible equally for that. But Mr. Rao and Mr. Gowda, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18.